Justin Bernasconi, welcome back to Australian Musician.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks for having me back.
You've just released a new album called Sleeping Like a Maniac. You've also recently had a couple of kids. Does the title of the album have anything to do with the arrival of the babies?
Not really, but it's actually quite apt. Actually, that would be very clever thinking on my part. But this whole album was done and dusted before Ezra, our daughter, who is 19 months old, was born. So yeah, I was hoping to release it last year, but something got in the way. You know, some sort of crazy thing got in the way. So here I am now.
Yeah. Have you been able to play at all? Any gigs this year in between lockdowns?
I managed to play a few gigs, bar gigs, like front bar gigs earlier this year in January and February. And then I came out for a weekend, the long weekend in March, out to the Beechworth and Rutherglen. And so that felt quite amazing. It felt like everything last year was just a bad dream. You know, it felt like everything was, you know, wow. So did that actually happen? And next thing, bang, we're straight back in. And I had to cancel all my my interstate gigs in July, going to New South Wales to play at the Jazz and Blues Cronulla Festival. And it looks like I'm going to be rescheduling my Melbourne launch in October till next year. And so it is really, really, really crazy at the moment. But I am enjoying the babies in lockdown. That's the good thing.
Yeah. Apart from a new collection of songs, were there any other points of difference that you wanted to make with this album and the last one?
Yeah, I think with my previous albums, Winter Pick and Barefoot Wonderland, I felt like with those particular albums, they're very stylistic choices. They were like Americana, blues, bluegrass, folk music, and I was really writing within those genres and, you know, really loving it. But I felt like what was happening with those albums, that I was trying to find something that would stick for me. And with this album, I really feel like I've developed into my own style, and I've embraced things like dissonance and tension in the music more so than, you know, and gone back to my roots in the UK, which is, you know, the British folk, but I feel also like the style of writing is a very big change to those albums, in a way that when I was writing a lot of these tunes, I was writing them when I was in Europe with Kat Ganteri, my partner, and we were going around lots of museums and art galleries, and I was looking at all these amazing paintings I'd never seen before, and I brought out my my former art student self, and started to look at these paintings and started to compose tunes in my head, and that was something that I hadn't quite done before, and then when I came back to Australia, I had quite a few ideas that I was really, really keen to start working on.
Yeah. Sleeping Like a Maniac is perhaps the most stark song on the album. Why did you feel that needed to be the title track?
That's a good question. I think one of the things is that title just popped out of nowhere, and I thought it was a very evocative title. It was a very connected title to what was going on in my life. I've had a lot of problems with sleep in my life, or lack of sleep, and actually, ironically, having two babies, I actually sleep really, really well now. I don't know why, but one of the things with that particular title track, Sleeping Like a Maniac, and the starkness is that it has these very, very gentle sort of arpeggios and motifs, and then all of a sudden it'll have a stark dissonant crash, and that's how my sleeping patterns would go. I would gently fall asleep, and then I'd wake up, and then I'd fall asleep, and then I'd wake up, and then it'd get to a point where I would fall asleep from exhaustion. and then I would have what these things called night terrors, and then I'd wake up again. And I fortunately I suffer from, I haven't suffered from for about a year or so, and I think that's to do with definitely having small children, that just feeling happy is a big thing. But that's what I thought, what sums up this whole record, and I think that did at that time.
Yeah. Tell me about Jeff Lang's involvement, and what does he bring to a project?
Well, one of the things that Jeff brings into it is that he doesn't bring things to it. He's very open. He's I would describe him as a lateral thinker, as a producer. He doesn't come up with any boundaries or any rules or anything. He's very quick. So that's what I find quite appealing working with him, is that I go, okay, I'm going to play, I've got this tune. He would have heard all the tunes before I've gone into the studio. And so say we pick a day, like I'm coming in next Monday, what tunes are you going to do? Or what tunes are you thinking about? I said, let's just do these 2 or 3. And I come in here, I already have the mics and the preamps worked out. By the time I'm in there, within 20 minutes, we're ready to go, which is great for me because I get quite anxious in the studio. And so having a quick setup time gives me less time to think. And so bang, you tune up the guitar, you do a bit of warming up, and you're right into it. And for instance, if I talk to him about different stylistic choices that I have in my head that I can't quite express, because he has a lot of the same reference points for music that we like, he will be able to literally mind read what I'm trying to say and put that into an effects or some sort of mic choice or EQ choice. And even on this album, a few times he's helped out a lot with the arrangements of a few tunes that I just couldn't fix out. And so I trust him, and I think having trust in a recording studio, where especially when it's you feel like there's a lot at stake. It's not a life and death situation, but you still feel like there's a lot at stake. It's nice to have somebody there who goes, I think I understand what you're trying to go for, and helps you achieve it.
Did you use all of your own guitars on this one, or did you borrow some of Jeff's?
No, I just used, I think I just used 3 guitars this time. I used the guitar up here, the Martin guitar that I've adapted into a 7-string guitar. And I did that on the last album. I was fooling around with it, and I just had that guitar tuned to open C. And I was using some minor tunings too, C minor tunings, which came out, sort of gave me more inspiration to come out with a few other tracks, like the title track, Sleeping Like a Maniac. The other guitar I used was the little Dan Robinson guitar, and Dan Robinson was a singer from the band called the Wild Cherries in the 60s, and he's now a Luther down in the coast. And I love his guitars. We have 3 of them, and the other guitar were just a Harmony Sovereign, 1960s Harmony Sovereign, which I enjoy, and just those 3 guitars, and that was it.
Yeah. Well, was there a track that was harder to get right than the others?
Yes. What ended up happening is that I started recording these tunes 2000 and when was it? It was 2019. And I had to take a bit of a break because I felt like a lot of these songs were a little bit too close to home. The subject matter was a lot of the songs were sort of a lot about different issues that I felt I had before, about just stuff that I've been carrying a long time. And I chose to write about these tunes I chose to write about these the subject matters in this album because I felt like I really, really had to. And so I found a lot of these tunes quite difficult to play. So a few tunes like Flag Staked Upon This Hill, I came back to after about 4 months. and by that time I'd also recorded Los Angeles a second time because I wasn't quite happy. I felt like I rushed through the first session with that particular song. So there's only 2 songs I really re-recorded, but the rest were like kept as in on the day.
The track Bygone Blues has a JJK feel to it. Was he an influence on you at any point?
Yeah, definitely the vocals, that sort of hush double track thing with the JJK. But I was listening to more Randy Newman right when I wrote that tune. A lot of this, the song like "You Got a Friend in Me," that sort of happy, sort of healing, sort of blues rather than anything too dark. And but yeah, JJK definitely.
A couple of tracks, there's great use of strings on them. Golden Leaves, when I heard that, I thought it was a cello in the background, but reading the notes, it's a viola.
Yeah.
Why did you choose viola for the background of that?
It's a good question. It's something that I heard in my head, and I wrote out or fleshed out that melody, and I gave it to a friend called Jason Bunn, who I think he works for Opera Australia or Opera Victoria, but he also plays for a lot of local bands like Gemma Rollins, Alison Ferrier. He's a fantastic violin and viola player, and he came in and played it, and I didn't know whether I wanted viola or cello or violin, but he brought in both, and as soon as he played the viola, it was like, wow. And we kind of really wanted like a Ken Loach, one of those miserable English films sort of vibe to the song, so it's really stark. And so we were it's quite an intense track, but we were kind of laughing when he recorded it because it was like, it really felt like it was should have been set in southwest London in a big council block or something like that.
Yeah. The track Blank Pages definitely has a cello behind it. It's hard to imagine that song without cello now. Was that in your head when you were writing?
No, not at all. When I wrote that particular tune, I started writing that on the airplane going to Europe, and on the way back I started thinking about vocal lines, and I was writing the vocal line on the plane. And then it took me a while to come up with the blank sing. I had to write it. But when we recorded it, Anita Hillman is Justin Olsen's partner, and she was formerly in a band called the Matria, and Justin Olsen came in to track those incredible drums a week after I tracked my guitar tracks. And I said, do you think Anita would be into putting in some cello? I have no idea what would work. And he's like, oh yeah, sure, just message her. So I messaged her, and she'd go, yeah, that sounds great. So she came in, had no idea what she would do, but she is such an amazing player that it'd be impossible to think that she couldn't come up with something amazing. And she did. And then I think at the end of the session, we were kind of really looking at each other going, wow, this sounds really, really different, and the cello really binds the whole track together, I find.
Yeah. I think that your playing on this album is more fluid even than what it was on the last album. Do you feel in yourself that you're an even better musician than the last album?
I think so. I feel I work at every album that I do. I think with this particular album, possibly because I feel more within my skin. I feel like I've got a style that sounds like me. That I felt like the ideas were more. I felt more connected to the ideas. I mean, I love playing blues, but blues is from a different culture. It's not my culture, and I like the thing. I like my guitar playing on this album. But the thing I worked most on was my singing. And trying to find a vocal range for each song that worked. But I do feel like I pushed myself a lot further than other albums.
Yeah. The track order, is that important for you? Something that you spend much time on?
Yeah, it took me a while. I tried with these different combinations. I had golden leaves first, and then blah 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 blah, and then I just got to a point where, you know, when you're just too close to things, I couldn't really figure out what was happening. The album order ended up coming from Jeff, because one thing is he's the producer, and he's, you know, let that little distance remove, I think, gives a good perspective on something. And I think we just had our baby daughter, so my mind really wasn't into sort of doing stuff like that. So I said, Jeff, can you come up with something? And he came up with something, and I was like, that's against all my instincts. And then I listened to it, I was like, that's pretty good. You know, can you shuffle around a few more tracks? He's like, sure. And then he came up with a cracking, you know, what I think is a really well thought out track order.
Yeah. So all things going well and society opens up soon, what would the plans be for this album and into next year?
Well, it's I think it's safe to say that 2021 is written off in terms of gigs. I think everybody is looking at 2022 with a little bit of trepidation. But I'm been announced for the Signet Folk Festival in Tasmania in early January. There's a few other festivals that I'm waiting to see whether I'm in, but hopefully I can get a date rescheduled in February for my launch, and we'll see what happens with the interstate shows. I don't think I'm going to be doing so many crazy tour dates like I did with the past two albums. Having two little babies is possibly pushing it a little bit, you know. So I'll probably be doing a Melbourne show, possibly a Sydney show. Whether I'll be doing very many regional dates in Queensland and New South Wales, I'm not too sure this time. Maybe the next album.
Yeah. All right, Justin Bernasconi, thanks for joining us again, and we'll catch you next time.
Yes, thanks, Greg, and thanks you for watching.